Charles Darwin, Charles Robert Darwin, 1809–1882, was an English naturalist, geologist, and biologist, best known for his contributions to evolutionary biology. His proposition that all species of life have descended from common ancestors is now widely accepted and considered a fundamental concept in science. He introduced his scientific theory that this branching pattern of evolution resulted from a process that he called natural selection, in which the struggle for existence has a similar effect to the artificial selection involved in selective breeding. Darwin published his theory of evolution with compelling evidence in his 1859 book on the origin of species. Puzzled by the geographical distribution of wildlife and fossils he collected on the voyage, Darwin began detailed investigations and in 1838 conceived his theory of natural selection. Although he discussed his ideas with several naturalists, in 1871 he examined human evolution and sexual selection in the descent of man and selection in relation to sex, followed by the expression of the emotions in man and animals, 1872. His research on plants was published in a series of books, and in his final book, The Formation of Vegetable Mold Through the Actions of Worms, 1881, he examined earthworms and their effect on soil. The anonymously published sensational bestseller, Vestiges of the Natural History of Creation, brought wide interest in transmutation. Light will be thrown on the origin of man and his history. His theory is simply stated in the introduction: as many more individuals of each species are born than can possibly survive, and as consequently there is a frequently recurring struggle for existence, it follows that any being, if it vary however slightly in any manner profitable to itself under the complex and sometimes varying conditions of life, will have a better chance of surviving and thus be naturally selected. From the strong principle of inheritance, any selected variety will tend to propagate its new and modified form. There is grandeur in the view of life, with its several powers having been originally breathed into a few forms, or into one, and that whilst this planet has gone cycling on according to the fixed law of gravity, from so simple a beginning endless forms, most beautiful and most wonderful, have been and are being evolved. Darwin's family tradition was nonconformist Unitarianism, while his father and grandfather were free thinkers, and his baptism and boarding school were Church of England. When going to Cambridge to become an Anglican clergyman, he did not in the least doubt the strict and literal truth of every word in the Bible. By his return, he was critical of the Bible as history, and wondered why all religions should not be equally valid. The theodicy of Halley and Thomas Malthus vindicated evils such as starvation as a result of benevolent Creator's laws, which had an overall good effect. To Darwin, natural selection produced the good adaptation, but removed the need for design. He thought of religion as tribal survival strategy. Darwin was reluctant to give the idea of God as an ultimate lawgiver. He was increasingly troubled by the problem of evil. His religious views in 1879, he wrote that, "I have never been an atheist in the sense of denying the existence of God. I think that generally an agnostic would be most correct description of my state of mind."